Yay. Hey everyone, it's Chris again. And for today's live, we're going to kind of resort back to what we did the other live, in which we talked a lot about different lawnmower questions and a lot of other questions. And we did a giveaway, which was hugely successful. We gave away a Cub Cadet mower in partnership with Stanley Black & Decker Outdoor. And we know that the winner has received the mower. So we're looking forward to hearing and maybe even seeing some video of him getting his mower. But we had so many questions come in that we weren't able to answer them all. So we wanted to take today's live to look at some of those questions and try and answer them for you today. And as well, for anybody watching, if you have a question yourself, just throw it into the comment section and we'll try and get an answer for you today if we can. And possibly even some of the questions we'll be answering today, maybe your question already, so maybe we can get those. So today with me, Sarah's here. She's running the high-tech stuff in the background. Brian is here. He's running the camera for me. And I have a couple of special guests here today that are going to join me here in just a second because they have some questions that they want to know if I can answer. So let's do that first off. And then, you know, they'll give me the serious questions and then we'll get into some of the other more lighthearted ones. So come on up. Come up and say hi.
Hi.
So here's my two guests. Okay. And what's your name?
Tomas.
Tomas. And?
Lucas.
Lucas. Okay. Who wants to give me their question first?
Me. How does a lawnmower work?
How does it work?
Yeah.
Well, you have to put, this is an engine that's on top of the lawnmower. So we put gas in it and then we start it up and then it turns a blade like this. This is what's underneath the mower. And when this spins, it cuts the grass off.
What about the trigger?
The trigger? Well, there is a handle up there you have to hold. It's a safety thing so that if you were to let go of it, it will stop the engine right away. Nobody get hurt. Sounds good?
Yeah.
And what about you, young man?
Um,
What's your question?
can I ask three?
Well, let's go with one because we've got a lot of questions to answer today.
Okay. Why why is this like why is the lawnmower so loud?
Good question. Because inside a lawnmower, the gasoline goes in and there's a little thing called a spark plug and it sets that gasoline on fire. It makes like a little explosion inside. So when you have that explosion, that energy has to go somewhere so it comes out the muffler. And it's such a big explosion, it's quite loud. And that's why they're so noisy. How about that, eh?
What's a muffler?
Now, what's a muffler? I'll show you a muffler. That's a muffler. Now, there's different mufflers that have different looks, shapes, and sizes depending on whether it's on your car or whether it's on your lawnmower or on your motorcycle. But most things that have engines have a muffler, so it keeps them quiet. So before I let you boys go and I start answering some other questions, is there anybody you want to say hi to today?
Oh, I want to say hi to my mom, my grandma, and my two cousins in Ontario and in Canada.
Very good.
This mom.
Mom will be happy. All right, boys, I'm going to carry on and we'll see if we can get some other great questions coming in to answer. So Sarah, what do we got?
All right, so we are going to break these down. So we're going to start with general maintenance of lawn equipment.
Okay.
So what should be done after every use here in working order?
After every use, there's not a whole lot. The biggest thing with lawnmower, no matter whether it's gas, electric, or cordless, is when you're done, clean the deck underneath. There's always going to be some grass buildup unless your grass is really dry, but if the grass is damp at all or nice and juicy, it's going to cling to the underside of the deck. And when that happens, you start to reduce the amount of suction that happens from the blade when it's spinning, so you stop getting a nice even cut and it starts to slow down the discharge of the grass going out. So if the grass can't get out from under the deck, it's either not getting mulched properly, or it's not getting out so more new grass can come in and be easily cut. That's the most common thing you should do after every mow. It's not just for looks. It also, for those with metal decks like this one, it keeps it from rusting. So you can have a mower that has absolutely fantastic performance. The engine runs, it starts, it's great. It does everything it should, but you wind up having it look something like this, and it winds up actually rusting right through. You know, it makes for a fairly expensive repair. So for the few minutes it takes, clean out your deck.
Right, that leads us to the next couple questions that were on that topic.
Okay.
One to say, is it better to wash or blow out the grass? Because they know wet grass can rot
Yeah.
the deck. And then do you suggest spraying the deck with a non-stick spray to keep the grass from sticking?
All good questions. Definitely, again, you want to clean out the deck. You can clean it out with water using your garden hose, which is ideal. And of course, you know, when you go to do that, you want to tip your mower on its side. But to do that, you want to make sure you're always tipping it so the carburetor is facing upwards to the sky. Otherwise, if you go the other way, you do risk fuel running into the carburetor and into the cylinder, and then you wind up with all kinds of problems. So just put your mower on the side, carburetor up, and you're all set, and you can use water. Some people want to use pressure washer, and you can, but you have to be careful because there is a seal where the shaft comes through that your blade attaches to. And a pressure washer can actually push water past that seal, and you wind up affecting that seal, and the moisture gets into your oil and affects that bottom crank bearing, and it just use a regular garden hose. You can use air, but just make sure you're wearing safety glasses because it's not hard at all for some of that to blow back in your face and you can get it in the eyes. And yes, you can coat the underside of your deck. Some people use used oil. Some people will use a silicone spray. I've seen people actually coat their underside of their deck with like car undercoating, which works. So yeah, you can.
Perfect. Is there any wear factors, and that's like wear and tear factors someone should be concerned about besides the normal, spark plug filters?
Probably the only thing you tend to see over time, besides the normal, like you said, engine maintenance, is if yours is gas and it's got a pull cord, these cords will over time wear and fray and sometimes break. So if you start to see that your starter cord is starting to get weak and frail or starting to separate, you'll want to replace the cord. And it's not that hard to do. You can either buy the complete starter assembly with the new cord handle and everything, just bolt it on, or you can just order the starter cord and change it. And we've got videos to show you how to do that. So it makes it really easy. The other thing is your wheels. No mower is out there. Well, they used to have a mower that flew that didn't have any wheels. It was called the fly mow, if anybody ever saw that. It was short-lived because it had issues. But yes, your lawnmower's got wheels, and dirt and grime will sometimes get into those axles where those wheels are. And the less expensive mowers just have a plastic wheel, so that grip on the plastic will wear it out and your wheels will get wobbly or even break. The more expensive mowers actually have ball bearing in them, and those wheels tend to last a lot longer. So, it's great at end of season to pull the wheels off, clean up the inside of those centers of the wheels, and clean up the axle shafts and put some lubricant and put them back on. Just saves you a bunch of money.
This one may cause some discussions, but how do you know when it's time to stop fixing the parts of your mower and just get a new one?
That's a really good question. And we've all been faced with that question, not just for mowers, but other things. So really it comes down to, how expensive is the repair? Are you capable of doing the repair yourself? If you are, that's great, because now you're just looking at the price of parts. So as long as the price of parts, your time, not saying it's not valuable, but you can spend your time doing your repair yourself, and you're only going to be paying for parts. So again, as long as the parts don't cost the same amount or close to what a brand new mower would be, it's worth doing the repair.
All right, the next topic we're gonna move into is talking about fuel. We had so many questions come in about oil, about gas.
Yeah.
So we're gonna work our way through that list. So the first one was like, do you need to mix oil and gas for a lawnmower? And what outdoor power equipment do you need to worry about mixing fuel?
Okay. So in lawnmowers, there was a time when they used to have to use mixed gas. Those are situations where the engine is a two-stroke engine, and that required mixed gas. Such as the Lawn Boy, the green machines, they were awesome. They were a two-stroke engine, and they did great, but you had to mix the gas. But because of a lot of environmental issues and all the things that go along with it, you know, the change in the climate, a lot of changes have had to been forced on to engine manufacturers in order to meet certain guidelines, in order to meet climate change restrictions. So in doing that, that pretty well took two-stroke engines right away from most outdoor products. You'll see a couple versions still here and there or coming in from somewhere else, but pretty well everything you find today is four-stroke and does not require the gas to be mixed. Chainsaws are still, chainsaws and line trimmers are still the product that you may still occasionally find two-stroke, in which case you have to mix your gas. And if you do have those and you're mixing gas, it's real important to look at your owner's manual or look at your gas cap, which will tell you what your mixture is and what type of fuel. Whether it's a 40-to-1 mix or a 50-to-1 mix, just make sure you're using the right fuel mixture for your two-stroke machine. If you're using too much oil, it's going to smoke and gum up your muffler. If you're using too little, your machine's going to run hot and you risk possibly seizing the engine. So you can buy pre-mixed gas, either in 40-to-1 or 50-to-1. Know which one you need, use the right gas, and you'll be all set.
All right, there's a few variations on when to change the oil. Does it need to be done annually, seasonally, after a few hours, after a few uses? What's the recommendation?
Yeah. There's no one specific answer. Mainly because if you're mowing just for residential, you're mowing maybe once a week in the busy grass growing season, or if you're mowing commercially in which your machine is going 8 hours a day, you know, every day of the week through the summer, then your oil change is going to be much more frequent. But typically you'd be looking at, for a normal size lawn with a regular mower, you can either change your oil at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season. It's your choice. And the only difference being is talking about moisture that forms inside the crankcase, which starts to deteriorate your oil. So if you leave the oil in all winter long and you have temperature fluctuations that, you know, where it warms up above zero and goes down, there can be condensation and form in the engine lives and storage, and that moisture will start to break down your oil. So you'd want to change in the spring. Or you can change it at the end of the season if you're in a climate where you're not going to get all those changes, and then you can have your oil not be broken down. Or you can switch over to the more expensive option and use synthetic, which is far more tolerant to condensation and temperature changes. Typically, according to people who make it, lasts longer than the regular SAE 30 oil or SAE 10W30, whatever. So there's lots of decisions. You pretty much have to look at your machine and your climate and your amount of usage and decide. If you're a high use, doing hours and hours of mowing every week, you're going to want to change your oil, you know, once more through the summer. If not, if it's just a once a week and a reasonable size lawn, you know, less than half an acre, then you only need to do it once a year.
So we covered oil. We're going to talk about gas now.
Yes.
Should you remove everything from all the gas from the machine prior to seasonal storage?
Ooh, you're asking all the good questions.
And our viewers asking the questions.
Well, there you go. And you know, honestly, this is like what you prefer, Ford or GM or Chrysler. it's one of those questions that gets debated all the time. The problem is gas will break down after 30 days. It starts to lose its octane. It starts to lose performance ability. So you can either at the end of the season fill your tank and put a fuel conditioner in it so that breakdown of the fuel takes longer to happen. Usually the gas is still good by the time you need to use your machine in the spring. And in doing this, it stops condensation from forming in your gas tank while it's in storage. Now, the other option is in the fall when you got to put your equipment away, run your engine, empty your gas tank, run the engine dry so there's no fuel in the tank, none in the carburetor, and then you don't have to worry about the gas going bad. But you do have to worry about if you're in a climate where, again, it warms up and cools down through the storage season, you're going to get condensation in that tank and in your gas cans. So personally, myself, in my climate, I wind up filling my gas, the gas tank on my machine. I put fuel conditioner in it. I run it for a little bit so that conditioner gets down through the carburetor. It keeps the carburetor seals lubricated by having that moisture in there. So that works for me. I haven't had any problems with my equipment by doing it that way, but by all means, it really is an operator's choice.
We had a number of questions about fuel stabilizers, things, additives like seafoam. So
yeah,
those do help keep your equipment running, keeps the lines clean.
There is a ton of fuel additives you can put into your gas engines, be it a car, lawnmower, whatever it is. So in my world of doing service, a huge portion of the work I've done has been on warranty equipment. So under doing warranty service, you have to follow the manufacturer's guidelines. So if you look at your owner's manual or even on the gas cap of your machine, it may actually tell you what octane or type of fuel you should be using in your machine. So for me to answer that question, I'm always going to refer back to the manufacturer's choice as to what they recommend putting in. Now, saying that, when it comes to some of these additives that are out there, they do work as an octane booster. They will increase the octane, and you do get more power from higher octane, there's no question. The problem is the machine was designed for regular fuel, and you start to put an additive or run high test into it. So you're raising that octane level, you will have better performance, no question. It'll be just like somebody turbocharged your motor. The problem is when you have more power, you have more heat. And more heat is the worst thing for small engines. So now you've got to worry about some of that heat dissipation, and you may actually wind up having a more powerful motor, but you're going to actually start to shorten the lifespan of that motor. So, you know, everything that's good has something negative to it. It's just kind of the fact of life. So by all means, if you want to use an additive that increases your power and operation, go for it. But understand that in the long run, you may actually shorten the lifespan of the engine.
No. And number of folks were asking, how do you actually change the oil? We've done some videos on that in the past where we had the pan, we got it all out of the mower, the snow blower. Can you just give us a little demo of where someone would
Well, that's
look?
It's interesting how it's changed over the years. Lawnmowers forever had a drain bolt on the underside of the engine that you would get to by going underneath the deck and removing that bolt and draining the oil out of your engine. Manufacturers moved away from that, and they tried a couple different things. They tried having a bolt in the side that you would take out, and you would have to tip your mower into a tray, but that was messy. It ran all over the deck, and it was horrible. And then they turned around and removed all that type stuff and basically said, take out your dipstick. No, that's the gas one. Take out your dipstick. Once you have that removed, you have a tray on the ground beside your mower, and you tip your mower over on its side so that the oil runs out of the dipstick fill tube and into your catch basin. And you'll notice wherever the dipstick tube is, it will be on the opposite side of your carburetor so that you can tip your mower upward without causing any problems. that works. It's an awkward way to do it. You've got to try and somehow manage to balance the machine by tipping it to get the oil pouring into a bucket. And now you're starting to see manufacturers recommending you go to some form of electric or hand pump in which you remove your dipstick, put a tube down inside, and actually suck the oil out of your crankcase and into whatever container you want to use. That's starting to become the favorite. Whichever mower you have, you'll have to, again, check your owner's manual and see what they recommend. So there's still a real cross-section out there of draining oil across your deck, tipping your mower over, or again, the newer ones, you're starting to see them recommending using a siphon pump to take the oil out that way.
Summary is if you're tipping the mower, carburetor needs to be up.
Carburetor has to be up.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now we're going to move on from fuel and talk about spark plugs and filters.
Okay.
So, do you need a special tool to change the spark plug?
Not a special tool. It depends on the spark plug and where it is. On this machine, the spark plug is recessed into the cylinder head a little bit, so it's not like you can get an adjustable wrench or a regular wrench to fit that. So a socket is what you need. Now, because the spark plug extends a ways, a normal height socket won't fit, so you need a deep socket. So the ideal thing is to buy a spark plug socket. And that'll go on your wrench, and there's two sizes, one for the little plug, one for the larger plug. The smaller ones you typically see in chainsaw and trimmers, and the large one you find in your mowers and tractors and snowblowers. And if you don't want to use the socket one, you can actually buy what they call a spark plug wrench. And the really nice ones are the ones that have a flexible T-handle. It allows you to apply a pretty good amount of force to loosen the spark plug to take it out and torque it back down when you go to put it back in. So there are some special wrenches for it, but you can get away with the socket.
What about doing the gapping for the
gapping? That's a really great question. A lot of people ignore gapping. You buy the spark plug that your owner's manual says fits your mower, and it's either on a shelf and you're pulling it off the shelf, or somebody had it out back from the parts counter and they hand it to you, and they're supposed to come pre-gapped. And that's good unless something's happened, somebody's dropped, or maybe during when they were packaging, the spark plug got banged or whatever. So the gap may not be right. And if that's the case, then you're not going to get a good spark. You're not going to get a good starting performance. So for the few seconds it takes, if you check your owner's manual, it will give you the spark plug gap, and you can get a gap gauge at any of your automotive stores or hardware stores. And just when you go to change a plug, take a second, make sure it's gap right. It's amazing the difference a proper gap makes. And that gap is just between the prong and the electrode, and gives if it's at the proper gap, you get a really good strong spark. And that just makes it so much easier for your mower to start and continue running. So for the little bit of time it takes, I always gap my spark plug.
And can you clean a spark plug, or do they need to be replaced often?
You can definitely clean a spark plug if it's just sooted up with some carbon, or even with a good fuel mixture, you're going to have like a brown fluffy coating over it. But yeah, you can use a spark plug cleaner and clean it. It's just part of good maintenance. But at the same time, for the price of a spark plug, if you're pulling it out, why not throw a new one in? Make sure it's gapped properly, put it in, and your mower's going to work just fine. But yes, you can clean spark plugs.
All right, so similar questions regarding the air filters.
Yep.
After how many hours should you change it, and can you wash air filters?
Okay, good question. There's two types of air filters. One that's paper, and the other one is foam. Paper you can't wash, foam ones you can. Paper ones are pretty easy to change, just like this one we've got here. This is a paper filter, and you can tell by the look of it, it definitely needs to be replaced. So yeah, these are great. They're easy to do. Some people try and blow them out so they can get a little bit longer life, but honestly, if it's starting to clog and it's got usage on it, change it. How often you should change it really depends on the climate that you're in. If you're mowing where it's dusty conditions, really dry soil that you're picking dust up anytime that engine's running or mowing, then you want to change this one frequently, maybe twice a year. If you're using the foam type of filter, which is actually, in my mind, a superior air filter because they're moistened with a little bit of oil. And that thin film of oil that's in that foam filter works fantastic for catching small particles of dirt that might get through a paper one. So I prefer the foam ones. Ideally, you'll find some of the newer mowers have a paper filter with a foam liner in behind it that, again, you can wash out in oil. But if it's just a foam filter, then yes, you can wash them in soapy water, let them dry well, then put a few drops of oil on that foam filter, and then squeeze that filter to get that oil moved across into all of the foam. Don't put too much oil because you'll actually create a problem where the air can't actually get through the filter because there's too much oil. So just the right amount.
All right, moving on to mower blades. They were a hot topic last time. So we've got a number of them here. How do you know when it's time to sharpen the blades?
Well, that's a good question. Really, the first indicator you need to sharpen your blades is when you start seeing the cut on your mower. When you do a pass and you cut your grass and you go back and look at it when you're making your next pass, look at what you've just cut. If some of it's longer than the grass beside it because it got pushed over and didn't get cut enough, or if you find that if you look down at some of the blades of grass that they're not been cut off, they've basically been pulled apart. Anytime you're seeing that, it's because the blade is not sharp. It's actually getting dull. And when that's happening, you're not going to get the nice clean cut you want. But the other thing that happens is the blade is not efficient. So in order to mow, the lawnmower has to work harder. So now you're starting to put more strain on the engine. You're going to be burning more fuel, all for the sake of a dull blade or a bent blade if you hit something. And if you've hit something, and it happens, we've all done it, especially if you're in an area where you get a lot of spring frost. It's amazing how every spring that frost manages to find some rock or root and push it up, and you find it with your mower. And so if you whack that, stop your mower, pull your spark plug cap off, tip it over on its side, carburetor up, and just look at your blade and see either maybe just a chunk was taken out of it, or worse come to worse, it actually got bent. If it got bent a lot, you're going to know pretty quick anyway, because the machine's going to vibrate like crazy. But that's your first indicator: is look at the grass after you've cut it and look to see if it's a nice clean cut, and if your mower's working, easily like it typically should be.
In a related note, is there a best angle to have the blades sharpened at?
It depends on the blade. There's a basic blade for side discharge or rear discharge that have a certain angle on them. Now, if you look at a mulching blade that's designed not to discharge, that it's actually going to use that blade to chop up the grass multiple times while it's underneath the deck. And you'll find most of them have like a wave to them. They'll have a different angle on them. So if you're looking to sharpen your blade, look to your blade closest to where the center bolt is, where there's an edge, and that will pretty well give you the angle for you to match when you're sharpening your mower. You also have high lift blades, which are for either bagging or side discharge or rear discharge, and they have the curl up on the end. Hard for you to see, sort of, but you can see that little kick up in the end. That is the lift. The more bend that has, the more suction it creates underneath your deck, and it does more for pulling the grass up. And you especially see that on mulching blades, or what they call a 3-in-1 on mowers that side discharge, bag, or mulch. And when you're doing that, if you have that machine, no matter which way you're mowing, there's a bit of a compromise there. So you lose a little performance when you try to have one blade for 3 different ways of mowing.
And then what sort of tools do you need to sharpen mower blades?
Ideally for sharpening your mower blade is to be able to put the blade in a vise and have a fine file and hand file it. It's the best way to get the nice edge that you want. Get the blade so that it's, reasonably sharp. The problem with hand filing is if you've hit something and you've taken a chunk out of your blade and you need to file the whole section of blade down in order to have it match, it's a fair bit of work. You're going to, put your arms to the test. The other option is to use some form of a grinder, a disc grinder, bench grinder, whatever, to sharpen the blades, which works and it's very quick. The downside is if you're too aggressive and putting too much pressure on the blade when it's on the grinding stone, it's going to heat the blade up and it's going to take some of the temper out of that blade where you're filing it or grinding it. And you'll find that your edge disappears fairly quickly when you go to move again. So you just have to follow the angle of the blade, and if you're doing it by hand, that's fine. If you're doing it with a grinder, just go easy on the amount of pressure so that you're not overheating that blade.
All right, one more mower blade related question. Do you have any suggestions on how to get a seized bolt loosened so that the blade can come off for changing and sharpening?
Yeah, that's could be fun, especially if it's not been taken off for a long time and it's, rusted and corroded up. There's a number of different products on the market for freeing up rusted bolts. Ideally, get a good quality one that's has really good ratings and good reviews. Use that. Give it a spray. In the evening or sometimes the day before when you want to take that bolt off, so it has a chance to seep in and try to break up some of the corrosion that's holding it. And then you're looking at having to provide a fair bit of force on that bolt. So you're either going to use an impact gun with a socket, which actually works quite well, or you're looking at having to put a wrench on that bolt and then with some form of mallet striking the wrench to try and break that bolt free so that it'll come out. And if you're using the wrench method, you have to be careful. You don't want that wrench to slip or fly off when you hit it with a mallet, which will sometimes happen. So you got to be pretty cautious when you're doing it. Again, have your mower turned up in the right direction and make sure you take your spark plug wire off, because in certain conditions you can have your blade spin, and if your mower's an easy start mower, it could actually try and run by that on the side. So remove the spark plug wire. Newer model machines have a brake on the flywheel that's part of the starting mechanism. You have to pull the bail down in order to remove the brake. They're safer, of course, but you know what? For the amount of time it takes and for your well-being, anytime you got your mower tipped up, pull your spark plug lead off, and then you don't ever have to worry.
So that's the power equipment version of unplug it before
Exactly.
doing any work.
Exactly. And it's good you said that, Sarah, because in today's world, we're seeing a huge conversion over to cordless and electric mowers. So if they're not plugged in, you don't have necessarily the issue. But with cordless, you have to watch. They have safety interlock switches on the handle. So there's usually a lever you have to pull and then a button you have to push before that thing will start, which is great. But if one of those fails, so that you only need one thing pressed, then you're at risk when you're getting underneath that mower. So most cordless mowers will have a safety switch. Usually it's a red plug or pin that you have to pull out, and that will prevent any power going to your motor, so you don't have to worry about doing anything with that blade and something terrible happen.
I'm gonna switch gears for a minute. We had a user who's currently watching asking about their pressure washer.
Yes.
So in this case, it will not start unless they spray starting fluid, and then it runs fine.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions on why that might be happening and how it can start without the fluid?
Yeah. There's something going amiss in your carburetor. One of the fuel passages or the medium gear rods is plugged with a little bit of dirt. I would clean that carburetor, and if you clean it and it's still doing the same thing, you're probably going to need to actually replace the carburetor itself. They're not horribly expensive, and it's actually, when you look at the price of a kit, and depending on how comfortable you are rebuilding carburetors, you may find it easier just to buy a new carburetor and put it on. But if you're having to give it a shot at quick start, you're bypassing the normal fuel delivery system by having the fuel come in with the air, and that's a sign that there's some carburetor problem.
Right, hopefully that helps. Which is relevant to our next batch of questions that we received, which is all engine issues. So first one, mower will start, run for a few seconds, and then dies. What should I do?
Well, first thing, and this is one that used to catch me up when I first started working on small engines. If it starts up and runs and then quits after a bit, look at your gas cap. And I know this sounds kind of silly, my gas cap, but all these gas caps are vented, which means as the fuel is being drawn out of the tank, be it metal or plastic, air needs to come back in to replace any of the fuel that's being pulled out. So if the cap is not vented, then when the fuel is pulled down, it'll actually create a suction because no other additional air is coming in. And even though the carburetor is wanting to pull gas, the tank is now airlocked and the fuel won't go in. So first thing you do if you get a machine that's doing what you're doing is just loosen your gas cap. Don't take it right off because you don't want gas splashing all over the place. But loosen your gas cap, start your engine up, run it for a while and see if it cuts out. If it doesn't cut out, replace your gas cap. If that makes no difference whatsoever, so you get it to start and then it's cutting out, you want to look towards your carburetor. So what's happening is fuel is getting into your fuel bowl, you're starting your engine and it runs great until it uses up that fuel, but fuel from your gas tank is not getting back into that carburetor fuel bowl fast enough in order to supply the demand of the engine. And if that's happening, then you need to take a look at possibly cleaning the carburetor or replacing the needle and seat.
All right, the next one, maybe a little more of a technical question, but what causes a hydrolock in a push mower? What exactly does that consist of?
That's an interesting term, hydrolock. Most times when I think of hydrolock, I'm thinking what's happened is raw fuel has gotten into the cylinder, or perhaps oil has gotten into the cylinder, and it basically hydrolocks, which means the piston goes up, but it can't go all the way up into the cylinder far enough for the crankshaft to make that rotation for the piston to come back down. So there's some fluid that's gotten up on top of the piston in the cylinder that's creating that. So you've either got a carburetor that's flooding fuel right through into your engine. You may have an intake valve that's leaking and allowing some of that mixture in. Or worse come to worst, you've got a fairly severe problem with compression or a broken oil ring and oil is being pushed up on top of that piston. Most times it's fuel that creates the hydrolock.
All right, next one is what causes an engine to surge?
Engines will surge from carburation mixture issues. Either it's not getting the proper amount of air to mix with the fuel, or you're not getting the proper amount of fuel to mix with the air. It's a pretty precise mixture that takes place within that carburetor for your engine to run nice and smooth, but if it's surging or hunting, you're looking at a problem within the carburetor itself, so you need to determine whether it's air or fuel that's causing it. Older carburetors had adjustments for air and for fuel, which were great, you compensate. Most carburetors today do not have any adjustments on them, so it means either cleaning or replacing the carburetor.
And related, what would be causing black smoke from the exhaust? Is it a carburetor issue?
Yeah, black smoke typically is. Blue smoke's oil, of course, but if it's black smoke, it's running too rich. You're getting more fuel in your mixture than you're supposed to be. So either the carburetor is a bit starved for air, which may be an air filter problem, or your float adjustment is not proper and you're getting more fuel than you should be, and that's what's creating the black smoke. Which is also, black smoke is also means you're going to have a lot of carbon in your cylinder, in your cylinder head, which is going to be a problem for either spark knock or compression problems, or it's going to push that carbon into your muffler and it's going to start to block up the muffler and it's going to, make the performance of the engine start to dissipate.
So what would white smoke indicate? Too much air?
White smoke's not good. White smoke means typically you have a very lean mixture. You have air, you have a little bit of fuel, just enough to keep the engine running. But when that happens, that engine is actually running hot, so you need to be careful when you're starting to see white smoke. You have an overheating problem.
So the summary for engine issues is always check the carburetor first.
Yeah, your carburetor is so important because it's the whole principle of it is to take the right amount of fuel and the right amount of air, mix it together, so it atomizes well when it goes into the cylinder. So that spark plug ignites it and gives you your ultimate power stroke. So yeah, the carburetor is huge, and carburetors have changed so much. They've moved away from the metal carburetors, so a lot of them are plastic now. And again, adjustments have been removed, so you can tweak it a little bit. So you can take them apart and try and clean them over again. Depending on the price, just replace the carburetor.
And that's going to be like lawnmowers, snow blowers.
Yeah, chainsaws, trimmers.
Anything that's got a small engine is going to have those same processes.
Exactly.
We're going to switch gears completely and talk about electric now.
Oh,
no,
okay,
no more
good.
carburetors.
No more carburetors.
The first one is, why would someone choose electric equipment over gas powered?
Get away from carburetors. No. There's a couple of reasons why you go for electric. The machines are lighter than a gas engine mower, so they're easier to push. You may be doing it because you're environmentally conscious. You don't want to have the exhaust going out. You may not enjoy the smell of gas and oil and exhaust. Or you have a fairly small lot and storage of gas and oil and a mower is a problem. So you may want to look at either electric or cordless.
And are electric mowers as good on thick grass as a gas powered machine would be?
Good question. Electrics can be just as good on thick grass as a gas mower. So if you think about gas mowers, when you go to purchase, there's different horsepowers that you're buying. So typically, if you have a really thick or a large lawn, you're going to buy a higher horsepower engine than you are if you have just a small lot with thin grass. Same thing applies to electric mowers. If you've got heavy grass, a nice thick lush lawn, you need to make sure you're buying an electric mower that has, and they rate them a little different. It's not necessarily horsepower, but you have to look at the current that the motor is rated at. So if it's a low current, yes, it's more economical to mow with, but it won't have the power of a mower that's got a higher current drop.
So based on your needs, not necessarily on
Exactly.
price point.
Yeah, exactly. So, take your time when you're looking to shop. Look up the different machines to see what their capacities are, what their power usages are, and look at reviews. You'll find a lot of good information in reviews from people who are, looking at or had a mower in a similar situation as you. And that can almost be the best advice as to whether the mower you're thinking about is ideal for your setting or not.
So I'm sure these questions are a it depends situation, but how long do those batteries last? How often do they need to be charged?
Well, let me say that really depends. So no, but it's an excellent question. I use a cordless mower at my home. I like it because it's light. I don't have to, in our community, it just makes it a lot easier not having gas stored anywhere and dealing with all that kind of issue and stuff. So on mine, my batteries will last depending on how thick my grass is, how long it is, how damp it is. So my batteries in the middle of summer will last longer than they will in spring or fall because my grass is thicker, it's juicier, and it takes more of an effort to cut it. So it's going to start to use more of the battery. As well, you got to keep in mind when you get into cooler temperatures, and I mean cooler, not freezing or frosty, but getting into that time of year, um, batteries will typically lose volume of energy um, in cooler temperatures. So there is no, they all come rated in amp hours as to how long they're rated for under ideal conditions. But typically don't expect if it says it's good for 5 amp hours, that's in perfect conditions in a perfect test bed that they do these in for comparison sakes. But in reality, when you go to use them, so basically, if you're buying a 5-hour battery, if you've got a normal one that's not too thick, plan on it lasting half of that.
Similar to when you're buying a new cell phone or laptop and they claim
Yep.
so much time.
Exactly.
And then how often for charging? So you put it back on the charger after every use?
I do. I try not to drain my batteries completely. The batteries seem to perform better if it's like down to half or 3/4 when I start to put them on charge. But it's really important to let, if I've used the battery and I take it out of my motor and it's warm to the touch or almost hot, let them cool before you put them in the charger.
Good tip.
It does it. It'll actually save the life of the battery. Some of the chargers that come with it are designed with some technology that will know if the battery's hot, and it won't allow the battery to charge just to protect it. So depending on what make and model you're using, it may have that technology, it may not. But yeah, I prefer not to let my battery come down. And through the winter, I rotate my batteries into my charger, so I never let them get totally drained through the winter. It's just too hard to bring them back.
That's a perfect segue for the next viewer's question that came in. It was talking about storing it over the winter. It was new in the fall, dead when they went to use it. Is there electric draw or do they typically die in the winter?
They will die in the winter. You can start out with it fully charged, but if you find in most owner's manuals, they recommend that you semi-routinely put it back on charge. You really don't want to have your battery get down, below 40, 30%, or else they'll die to the point. Some batteries that you have that are cordless, if they get totally discharged, they won't even take a charge when you put it back on the charger. So the recommendation is put a calendar note in your phone or mark it on the calendar, through the winter to just go take your battery and throw it on your charger. And that way come spring when you need it, it's going to be good to go.
And our final question on electric equipment was about the proper storing of those lithium ion batteries. Just whether, I guess they're worried about the flammability.
Yeah, it's a question that comes up with any kind of lithium ion battery, whether it's in your car or in your mower or in your cell phone. Storage typically isn't, but they like a cooler environment is great. You don't want to have them, set in your oven or in your oven drawer or anything like that, which is a little silly just even talk about it. But yeah, store them in a cool place. Don't let them get totally discharged. Keep them, at least over 30–40% charge. That seems to make a difference in how long the battery will last. But be aware, if you have lithium ion batteries for your power tools or your mowers, if you drop them and they take a hard enough impact, you might physically look at it and you don't see any damage, nothing's cracked or whatever, but the connections inside those lithium batteries, and in most cases, some of those big battery packs are really just a whole bunch of like AA batteries, all put together in a clump and connected together. And it only takes one of those batteries to break a connection to short or the ground, and that's where things start to go bad. So if you really, inadvertently drop your battery, put a dot on it or something so you'd be aware of it. Keep an eye on it, especially when you go to charge it. If it seems exceptionally hot, take it off your charger and dispose of it.
All right, that is the end of the list of questions we had for today.
Awesome.
So we are taking a small summer break in our 2-week schedule. We'll be back in a month's time.
Yep.
But we have lots more topics. We got more manufacturer partnership giveaways that we're excited to do later in the year. So make sure you subscribe to the channels here so that you will be notified when we are giving away more, more outdoor power equipment. And as always, you can submit your questions and we will answer them. We'll make videos about them. We'll make sure you get the information.
Yeah, for sure. Love the questions. This type of forum where, you know, people have questions and we can try and answer them. And you know, I may not always have an answer for you, and I won't, you know, give you a bunch of crap answers. I'll tell you the best of my knowledge. If I don't know, I'll find out for you. There's a ton of equipment out there today. We've gone from mowers to just the old ride-ons to zero turn. Yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff out there that I might not even have had a chance to get my hands on yet, but you have. So, you know, these lives are a great opportunity for us to discuss those things, either problems or just, you know, if you get something you think is amazing, you're pretty proud of, it's a great time to bring it up into our conversation and we can let others know about it. So anyway, we look forward to coming back and seeing you again. And to what Sarah's point about, we've got some other agreements with other companies we're going to be doing. So there's going to be some more giveaways, and I love giving away stuff, especially power tools and lawn and garden products and stuff. That's just kind of like the old Tim Taylor thing. But anyway, those of you old enough to know who that is, that's awesome. Those of you who don't know, look them up and check them out. You might find you get a few laughs.
With that note, we will see you all next time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks everybody who joined in. And again, if you have any questions or thoughts, put them into the comments and please subscribe. One, not just because it looks good for us, but it lets you be aware of some of the stuff that we're doing and the information that we're trying to share with you. So thanks again very much, and we'll see you next time.